Are you tired of spending too much of your hard-earned money at the supermarket? Are you dreaming of farm fresh eggs, homegrown veggies, and homemade everything? Well, welcome to Ditch the Store, where we break free from supermarket dependence and take back control of our food and household essentials. I'm CJ, and I'm here to show you that life is too short for store-bought eggs. So let's get started. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ditch the Store. I just had a false start on this one. I went to start recording and I've got my little notes in front of me on my computer. I just kind of have a little touchpad scroll thing that I have there. And I had episode 161. I'm thinking, the last episode I recorded was 158. How am I at 161? And then I realised that I just had changed my episodes around a bit to get them more in order. And we're actually at 159, which is what I'm recording now. And it is cool season gardening. Now, I'm really looking forward to some cool season gardening this year because I missed out on all of the summer and spring months because of my broken leg. So this, to me, this is my opportunity to kind of redeem myself and have a crack at some things. Now, I do still have a fractured leg and I am going to the specialist. I think, God, I will have been to the specialist by the time this comes out, and we will know what we're supposed to be doing because I currently have non-union on the bones. So that means the bones aren't healing the way that they were meant to. So we're 5 months in, and the bones should be kind of back together, and they're not. Now, it could be because I had a bacterial infection. I had 2 bacterial infections and they are pumping me full of antibiotics, which is not helping. It could be because of my age. I'm over 50 and female, so, but my bone density was pretty good when they had a look at it. So fingers crossed, it is more to do with the bacterial infection, and I'm hoping that the specialist is going to give me some really good answers about what we can do to help that bone nudge it along on its healing process. Anyway, so hopefully keep an eye on the socials. I will post when I know what's happening. They're talking about putting me in one of those halo frames, which is less invasive on the bone and sometimes promotes better healing. It sounds uncomfortable. It sounds really hard to drive with and work with and sleep and shower and all those kinds of things with. But at the end of the day, I am prepared to try anything to get this bone to heal. I'm really, really attached to my leg and I'd like to keep it that way. Anyway, cool season gardening. Well, most people think that winter is the time where the garden completely dies off. I want to think about what doesn't die off, because there's no such thing as a completely dormant period. I mean, even if you're in a snowy area, there are going to be things that you can grow. I would say if the ground is covered in 2 meters of snow, you're looking at a greenhouse. But you can still grow these things within a greenhouse environment. I've also seen people with raised beds put lids on their raised beds to allow them to grow things in like a hothouse environment. Now, just because you've got a greenhouse or a hothouse environment, if the external temperature is still, -5, or for you guys overseas, that would be, 10, 20 degrees, then if it's still really, really cold outside, you're not going to be wanting to grow tomatoes in the really, really, really cold, because the tomatoes are not going to grow. You'd have to have a very heated, artificially heated hothouse in order to grow things that would normally grow in summer. But you can grow some other things that would normally grow in winter. And if you're in a greenhouse in a snow environment, they should still grow if the temperature is at that normal kind of outside temperature where it wouldn't be completely covered over with snow. And the only reason you do that is because I would imagine the ground would just get too hard. I've not tried to grow vegetables in a snowy environment, but I would imagine the ground gets too cold and too hard to actually function to grow anything. I don't know what happens. Somebody send me a DM and tell me what happens if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. What happens with the grass over winter? Is it particular grasses? Do they just go dormant with all that snow on them? And then as the spring defrosts, do they kind of get another lease on life? Are they like a dormancy type grass? Yeah, I don't know, having never lived in a really proper snow-filled area before. But a lot of beginners think, I'll just take the winter off. That's my off season. I'll pull everything out. I'll just sit and wait. But don't. If you've got one garden bed even that you can keep going over winter, trial a few things and see how you go, because there are some things that you can grow right through winter. Even when it's where I am, which I think they call it a 5B area. We get frosts. 5B or 8B. I don't know. I'd have to have a look. We get frosts here. The ground gets hard. The water troughs freeze over. It's not good. But there are some crops that love that colder climate and that you can grow. So instead of shutting the garden down completely, have a crack at growing them and see how you go. I know the first time I grew cauliflowers through winter, I was so chuffed with myself that my garden hadn't just been dormant all winter. So we're going to have a look at what changes during the cool season growing period. And before we even talk about what you need to plant or what you want to plant, you need to understand what's different, because this is where it sometimes trips people up. Growth slows down. I'm going to start coughing in a sec. Growth slows down over that winter period. Plants take a longer time to mature. So what might have taken 6 weeks in summer or spring might take 10 to 12 weeks now in winter. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just need more patience. And it does mean that you don't necessarily have to be out in the garden like every day. You could probably cut it down to every second day. Oh God, yawning like crazy. It is a slower rhythm, but it's not a failing garden. Okay, you just need to kind of realise that because of the dormancy and the coldness, things will slow down. Less water is needed. Now, this is a good thing if you live in an area where water is, at a premium, and we're off-grid with our water, so water is always at a premium to us. The cooler temps mean there's less evaporation out of the soil. So that means that the soil doesn't need to be wetted down as much. Now, if you're in a frosty area and you wet it down too much, you can actually get the soil kind of almost like freezing in areas. So it's really important not to go overboard with the water. Soil will stay moister for longer because there's no heat and evaporation drying it out. But overwatering is your biggest risk because you'll end up killing them with kindness by going too heavy-handed on the water. So really look at the ground and even I would say light mistings rather than soaking would be a better option through winter. Now, there are different and fewer pests to contend with. Because it's dormancy time, insects and things like that don't tend to be as prevalent in winter as what they are in summer. So there's still pests, but they're just not as many of them. And they're different pests as well. So you'll get a break from the really bad summer pests, but things like slugs, snails and caterpillars will still show up. And particularly if you are growing cabbages, the one that used to get me every time was the cabbage moth. Cabbage moths, just the winter doesn't seem to bother them at all. And you can get all you do is get a little bit of wire. You can buy them in the shops, but me being a cheapskate, an old coat hanger bent out, like an old metal coat hanger bent out, and just tie a little bit of white plastic, like from an old shopping bag, around it in the shape of a bow, so it looks like a butterfly. And the cabbage moths, that's what worked for me to stop the cabbage moths. I don't know the science behind it, so don't ask, but it certainly worked. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention was that soil can become your best friend. Winter gardening is less about feeding plants and more about building up the soil. So if the microbial life under the soil is still active and doing well, then your plants will do well. So this is where you want to be able to have a good source of compost that you can dig into the soil before you plant anything, because you want the real nutrient-dense kind of soil before you put any winter plants in. And if you've got a bare garden bed, now is your time to build up for spring. So put the compost in. This year we're going to trial some of our Angora wool that we get off some of our Angoras is not good for shearing because the paddock they're in is too burry. I'm going to put that wool down. I was watching a girl over in the UK, and she uses, or I think she's in Ireland, She uses sheep's wool. I'm going to put Angora wool down on top of my compost in my empty garden beds, hoping that that's going to help that soil life grow so that come spring I have really, really good garden beds. I'll let you know how they go. But good winter soil, even if it's not for growing at the moment, it will promote your growing season come spring. So, what to grow in winter? And there's a couple of things that do really well in winter. And depends again where you live. So get online, check out what your zone is. I think I always say it and then get it wrong. Seed Mate or Garden Mate. There's a page that I have a link to, and I put in there and see what's going to grow. Oh, just had a big yawn then. Sorry, people. I put in there and see what's going to grow because in different areas, different things do really well. So if you're in northern Queensland, for example, you've probably got an all-year growing season. For us down here in the south, we definitely can't grow tomatoes through winter, but we can grow lots of other things. So keep it simple and remember that the crops that you grow need to be things that your family are actually going to use. If your family hate broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage, don't grow them. Like, it's just not worth it. Like, you're growing stuff, to give away to other people or to sell? That's about it. So don't grow them if you're not going to use them. Potatoes, garlic, things like that, you can put in the ground and leave right through winter. But you need crops that are reliable, forgiving of the cold, and also the fact that through winter, you're probably not going to get out into your garden as much as you'd like to, especially if you work full time. So they need to be crops that can handle themselves without you constantly monitoring. And they need to be worth the effort. No point growing something and having to stand out there in the freezing cold to harvest and plant and do things if it's not going to be beneficial. Now, this will depend, of course, if you are Australia coming into winter, Northern Hemisphere spring. You have at it, people, and grow your spring veggies because I love you guys and that's fantastic. But meanwhile, us here will be doing what we do. So here's a couple of crops that do grow in winter, depending on your actual climate, but these are things that can handle some of the cold. Spinach, kale. I don't think I'd ever grow kale. I have tried kale once and I really did not enjoy the experience. Lettuce, there are cool season varieties of lettuce. Silverbeet, or Swiss chard, some people call it. Rocket, and some people call that, I can never say it, arugula. Rocket, it's a form of lettuce. Now, the reason that these ones are good to start with, they're fast enough growing to keep you motivated, like you actually get a result fairly quickly. You can cut and come again, so you can cut some off and come back and it's still growing, and you can keep doing that for a little bit, and they tolerate the cold really well. So not maybe complete snood in areas, but they certainly tolerate the cold. Some of the root veggies that you can set and forget, and these are the ones that I like putting in because these ones, and I just realised I don't have two of my favourites on there. That's insane. I like doing these ones because, especially at the moment with my broken leg, I'm not going to be able to get out into the garden as much as I want to. And even when I do, I can't do physically a lot. So these are good ones to put in once a week, twice a week, go out and check. Potatoes, garlic, carrots can grow in through the winter months. Beetroot, I do love me a beetroot, especially a homegrown beetroot. It tastes so much different to the beetroots in the shop. Radishes, I wouldn't grow, but they do grow. Turnips, again, I would rarely grow, but they do grow. And the reason that they're kind of really good to grow is because it's minimal maintenance and they just tick away underground. You kind of, the potatoes, you're looking at them growing, and as the plants are growing up, you're adding more mulch to try and make more potatoes, because the more higher you build the mulch, the more the root systems span out. But other than that, they just kind of do their own thing. They'll just grow quietly in the background without you thinking about it. And they're really good ones for beginners. Not so much maybe the carrots and the turnips. I always struggle. I end up with weird bent carrots and turnips. But beetroot and radishes don't. They just grow into their little bulbous mass under the ground, and they're really, really low maintenance. Potatoes, like I said, you can stack up more mulch on top of them to get more out of them. Garlic is set and forget. And the only thing with garlic, the only time I've ever buggered it up with garlic is where I overwatered them. They got a bit rotty because they got soggy. But I've had some really good runs with garlic where I've had every garlic I put in produce a full bulb, which is fantastic. Now, the brassicas. So these are the ones I find a bit tricky sometimes, and I find that the pests can be a bit weird. And one thing I'll say about the first one is as soon as the seasons turn, as soon as it starts to get warm, it'll go crazy. Broccoli. I love broccoli. It grows well in the winter. But as soon as, when I was growing it, when we lived at Gunning and the first couple of years here, when the weather would turn and it would get a bit warm, it was a bit like coriander in that too much heat and it would just bolt, and you would end up with broccoli flowering and seeds going everywhere and no real broccoli heads. So it really is a cold only kind of plant. It really doesn't like it here once it gets warm. Cabbage, we did well with cabbages one year there. We had an absolute mozza. Cauliflower, again, we've done really well with cauliflowers. And don't forget with cabbage, as they grow, you can rip them out and start turning them into sauerkraut. And that keeps them, in that really good fermented food range in the fridge for you for the whole of winter. It'd be awesome. And Brussels sprouts. Now, I never used to like Brussels sprouts to eat, and it's funny. I always saw them as kind of like my mum used to stew them and boil the crap out of them. And I have since found out that the reason I don't like Brussels sprouts is I just don't like boiled the crap out of food. So with Brussels sprouts, what I found was if you chop them into quarters and fry them with bacon and onion, Brussels sprouts are delicious. And when they are fresh out of your garden, they are 10 times nicer than the ones you get in the shops. The ones in the shops are pretty crap compared, like there's just no flavour. But they all love the cold. So they're all ones that you could absolutely grow through winter. Now, remembering, if you're in a cold area, they will take longer. So don't sit there and think, oh, in 6 weeks' time, I'm going to have a cabbage. No, in 10 weeks' time, you might have a cabbage. You can pick them when they're little, but you want them to grow to full size before you pick them. But they are rewarding. And certainly all of those are veggies that I would say are fairly bland most of the time. When you grow them and they're homegrown, you will notice a huge difference. They will taste so much better than the stuff you get in the shops. And herbs. So here's some herbs that actually like the cold. Now, I wouldn't grow these outside here because I think that they would probably struggle a little bit with our frosts. But certainly on the veranda, they would be good because they could handle the cold without the frost being directly on them. Parsley will grow in cold climates without too much problem. I mentioned before coriander and how it bolted in the summer. And bolting just means that it just goes to flower. You don't get much plant out of it. You get more flower out of it, which is great if you want to replant it, Coriander, for my Northern American friends, cilantro. And of course, there's always people that hate coriander. The Handy Helper cannot stand it. We had sombreros for dinner. Thursday nights are our takeaway night, and last Thursday we had sombreros for dinner, and he had the tiniest piece of coriander in his wrap that he had, and he was mortified. He was like, "All I can taste is bloody coriander." I think I love it. I could eat bunches of it just straight up. But if you are somebody who doesn't like coriander, there's something to do with your DNA that you can taste poison or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I'll have to look it up and I'll post something, whatever the coriander thing is. But cilantro, yeah, it grows well in the cold and it doesn't like the heat. When the heat hits it, it bolts and goes to seed. Thyme, I haven't grown thyme before. I really would like to. And chives. Chives obviously like a variant of an onion family, and they do grow really well in the cold weather as well. And I've got a little note down the bottom, way less bolting compared to summer. And that's the thing, way less going to flower and seed than what you would have in summer with those plants. Now, honourable mentions, there are a couple that, if you put your mind to it, they grow okay. Peas are not bad for beginners, and depending on the variety of the pea and depending on how cold your climate is, you could get away with growing some peas. Broad beans, very hardy. I think a kid could probably grow them without killing them, so they'd be another good option. And spring onions. I think I didn't mention onions, but I think onions are another one that grow okay in the cold. We've certainly grown them over winter without a problem. I think that's it. I probably missed half a dozen. If I have, tell me. But a shift. I've got really sore legs at the moment from not being as mobile as what I should be. So if there's something I've missed, DM me, tell me, post it on Facebook, say this is what I'm growing this winter, and we'll discuss it. So how to set yourself up properly heading into that winter months, like cold garden kind of thing. And it doesn't happen automatically. You could say, it happens overnight. What is it? It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. I'm going to sneeze again. Pause just in time to not have you all listen to me sneeze. Aren't you lucky? Soil prep is everything. If you do nothing else, and even if you're not growing things over winter, but if you do nothing else, make sure you put some compost in your soil before you get your winter veggies in. Add compost, homemade bonus points if you've got it. We certainly have enough compost up there to fill 10 garden beds. But if you don't be embarrassed to have to buy some. There's a lady probably about 100 k's away from here, and she actually is the compost queen, and she sells people truckloads of compost, so you can go and buy an acre's worth of compost if you were into it in that way. And supposedly her Latasia, I think it's called, supposedly her organic compost is the bomb. Like everything grows in it. But loosen up the soil too. You've got to remember that if the soil's got moisture in it and it's kind of sub-zero temperatures, it's going to get rock hard. Give the soil a good loosen up. It'll remove any old roots and debris and things like that, but it also makes it easier for the new roots to take if the soil's got a little bit of aeration in it. And remember, you're not just planting, you are actually building a system. You want that soil to be healthy, whether it's getting planted out through winter or prepped for next spring. So the best combo that you can do is compost and mulch. The compost feeds the soil and the mulch protects it. Now, like I said, this year we're going to try, we're just about to shear our Angora goats, and I'm going to use the non-viable wool, the wool that I wouldn't clean and try and spin. I'm going to use that to cover the garden beds to try and mulch down the compost that we've put into it. That combination together should retain some moisture. It should regulate the temperature of the soil so that the microbes that are in the soil can grow better, because obviously everything gets dormant the colder it gets. So warm soil is generally got more live matter in it. So having a good mulch over it will allow the temperature to stay a little bit above what it would be normally. And therefore it'll improve the structure of the soil. And that means that hopefully by the time my leg is healed next spring, I am going to be able to go great guns on all of our garden beds. And if you're growing in that garden bed, you can still use the mulch around it. I'll probably put the wool over some of the spuds that I'm putting in and garlic, because it'll just help protect the plants a little bit more, having that wool around it. Sun. It matters more through winter because at the end of the day, plants can't grow without sun. So the sun sits lower, you have less daylight hours, there is less heat that comes out of the sun. What you need to do is look at your garden beds before you pick which garden bed you're going to keep going over winter. Watch where the shadows fall. So you may have to move garden beds or pots, or pick a different garden bed to use depending on where the sun actually lands, because you want the sun to land on the garden bed. Definitely, if you can use a garden bed that gets full sun, then that's going to be more beneficial, because you've got to remember there's just not enough strength in it and there's not as many hours in the day. So you're not going to overdo it with these winter plants by having full sun on the garden bed. What worked in summer might be too shady now, and that's fine. Just save those garden beds, compost and mulch them, and save those garden beds for next spring, when you do need garden beds that cop a little bit of shade. Frost protection. Now, some people go all out with all kinds of structures and frames and things like that over the garden beds, and you really don't need to go fancy gear on your garden beds. Things like old sheets and towels, built into a frame, like so just a small timber frame, or even your tomato stakes. You could use 2 tomato stakes and have them going up into like a teepee kind of shape, like an A-frame, and have a sheet or a towel that goes across that. Now, I would say do that in super frosty times, like during the real July for Southern Hemisphere people. July in the southern states is when we get most of our frosts. Also in August we get a lot of frost. If you're in a snow area, that might actually work for you, depending on how much snow you get. Being able to you might have to put something more solid, like a piece of corrugated iron, maybe some of the laser light, the clear corrugate that you use on roofing to allow light to come through. You could put that onto an A-frame just to keep the snow and the ice off the plants, and then just overnight when it's at its coldest, and then of a daytime, take it off and allow them to get the sunlight that's coming in. You can do just little, I think they call them clouches. They're like little plastic or glass, they used to be glass, bowls that you sit over individual plants. So if you've got an individual plant you're growing, you can just put these little covers over the individual plants to stop them from getting really hit with frost. There are commercial covers that you can buy and things like that, but honestly, an A-frame with a sheet is probably going to be your best bet overnight, and then just flip back your A-frame of a daytime and allow it to get the weather and the sun. These plants that we're talking about, they're going to grow in the cold anyway, so it's not like you need to protect them from every bit of cold, every bit of frost, etc. You just want to protect them from the bulk of it. You don't want the plants to burn in the frost. And remember, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't have to be an Insta garden. We talk about it all the time. It's not about it looking perfect. It's about it working. So if it works, great, use it. Now, beginner mistakes. And there's a few, and I've made probably all of them, I would say. And I probably will make some of them this year too. But because I've made the mistakes, I'd like to mention them to you so that you don't make the mistakes. Planting too late. Now, if you have missed a planting time for a plant that you really wanted to get in and you still really want to get in, my hot tip is to go to somewhere like Bunnings and buy a pre-established seedling, so that you skip that first 2 to 4 weeks of growing cycle and then get it in as soon as possible. It doesn't mean that you can't grow things because you missed the ideal time to put them in. What it does mean is they may not grow as well. You may not get as much produce off them. They might, get to their full height, and you might only get a few weeks worth of whatever plant, whatever vegetable they are, before they bolt when the days start to get longer and the weather starts to warm up. But you'll still get something out of them. So don't stress that you've missed the cutoff time for putting garlic in. You can put it in still. Just know that it's probably not going to grow as well as if you'd put it in at the correct time. And just make a note on your calendar for the next year to say, next year I am going to make sure I've got this in the ground by then. They end up as slow growers. Not the end of the world. But also to remember that some crops need a little bit of established time before it gets really cold. So that's why I'm saying buy seedlings that are already at a certain height before you put them in. Not feeding the soil. Because the soil is so much colder through winter and the plants are so much slower growing, and they're probably trying to get more nutrients out of the soil because they're not getting it out of the sun and water and air and atmosphere that they would normally get during those spring and summer months. If you skip on compost into your soil or fertiliser into your soil, you have to expect that the plants are not going to grow as well. And that's just the way it is. And that's fine. If you can't do it, if you don't have it, you can't afford to buy compost, whatever, put some kitchen scraps in the soil as quickly as you can around the plants. Try and get the soil health up to a certain standard before you get them in. But even after you get them in, you can compost around the plants, not up against the roots. I wouldn't do it, not up against the stem because it could damage it. But certainly get the soil around it so that it is teeming with microbes if you need to. It will help overall. But if you are leaving the garden bed blank for spring, whack as much compost in as you can. And like I say, if you can't afford compost, every bit of kitchen scrap you've got, and meat included. People say don't put meat in. We put meat in our compost. I'm sorry, people carry on about it. I put dead animals in our compost. If the compost breaks down enough, it's going to break all of that down. I wouldn't be putting meat in to a garden bed that you are growing veggies in right at this moment. But if you're putting it into soil that's going to be turned over a few times and it's going to be allowed to completely break down before you put a plant in, I don't know why people carry on about the meat thing. They think there's going to be some kind of bacterial issue. Like, I mean, have you seen what chickens eat? Chickens eat fucking dead, scabby meat all the time, and they produce eggs without a problem. So, yeah. I probably just, mortified a million people. But anyway, expecting the summer speed. In winter, everything goes slower, including us humans. And people trying to garden over winter do sometimes, and I've done it. Why is that plant not growing? Why is it taking so long to get to fruit? Why I can't even see any buds on it, There's not as many bees out because the bees are cold and they're staying in their hives, so they're not pollinating as much. The soil's cold, so the root system is working twice as hard to try and get the nutrients. It's half the daylight hours, half the daylight heat. So the poor plant is struggling to get what it's got to get done. You need to back the fuck off and let the poor plant do its thing. It will get there eventually. You just have to be mindful to yourself. It's not that it's not working, it's that it's winter and everything is going to go a bit slower through winter. It's okay. Take a breather. You'll be fine. Overwatering. I did mention this before. Overwatering is a big one. Soil stays wet a lot longer in winter and roots will rot a lot easier, and that will cause your plants to struggle. And there's some plants that really, really don't do well in soggy, wet environments. So when in doubt, don't water. If you look and you think, I'm not sure, should I water? I'm supposed to water, but the ground doesn't look that dry, don't water. You're better off having them a little bit dry than too wet. So keeping it manageable. Don't get overwhelmed. I know you're keen and I know you want to get it done, but just try and keep it simple. It's like I said, going into your first spring of homesteading, you don't need to plant everything. Pick a couple of things, one bed, couple of plants that your family are going to eat. If you really always wanted to do fermented cabbage, sauerkraut, then throw a couple of cabbages in. If you want to do some spuds, I don't know many people that don't eat spuds, but your family may not, but spuds are a great one. Garlic is a great one. Who does not use garlic in cooking? I don't trust people that don't use garlic in cooking. So even when I'm carnivore, I'll cut up garlic and put it on a steak, like fry a steak in garlic butter, Just pick a couple of things, okay? Just one corner of the yard, one garden bed, and try that. If it doesn't work, no biggie. But don't do more than 3 to 5 crops. If it's your first year winter trying to grow things, don't do more than 3 to 5 crops. I would say garlic, potato, broccoli. That's a good one that most people like. Parsley for your herb. Parsley's an easy one to grow. And grow some spinach. Most people eat spinach, baby spinach these days. You can grow normal spinach or baby spinach, but a little bit of spinach. If you're adventurous, you could try carrots. But like I say, carrots I always bugger up because they just curl and go into weird shapes and shit. But the main thing you're focusing on is just a couple of plants and getting them to grow well. And then next year you can add on that, okay? So just start small. Don't try and overwhelm yourself. Don't try and do everything. You will have to buy things through winter, and that's fine too. You don't have to be fully self-sufficient yet, okay? It's people that are fully self-sufficient, especially ones you see on Instagram, Pinterest and stuff. They've been doing this for 10, 20 years. They're probably doing it off the back of their parents doing it. And never ever having a break. The parents did it for 20 years and then they've taken it over and they've been doing it for 20 years. And you can't compare yourself to them. If you compare yourself to them, what is it? Comparison is I don't know. It's a disappointment is what it is. So what you want to aim for is being more confident with your winter garden, having consistency with your winter garden, and learning what works and what doesn't, and what works for you and your family. You might find that you grow broccoli and the family just go, no, we'd rather frozen broccoli than the homegrown broccoli. You might grow Brussels sprouts and think, those Brussels sprouts aren't what I was hoping for, in which case don't do them again next year because you're not going to like them. And just remember that winter gardening isn't harder. It's just a little bit different. Slower, simpler because you're going to grow less, aren't you? You're not going to try and grow everything. A little bit less chaotic than summer because in summer everything just goes to, crazy. But it's probably a really good season to learn what to grow and what not to grow. If you can grow food in winter, then summer is going to, you'll smash it by the time you get to summer. Anyway, that is it for me for this week. Have a fantastic week, and I will be back next week, and I think I am talking about compost next week. But I'll talk to you then. Bye for now. Well, that's it for today's episode of Ditch the Store. If you're loving the journey to self-sufficiency, be sure to subscribe. You can also leave a review for us or share this episode with a friend who's ready to break up with their supermarket. If you've got questions or success stories, we'd love to hear about them on the socials. You can also find me at www.mojohomestead.net. Until next time, keep raising, growing and making. And remember, life's too short for store-bought eggs.